Hello and welcome to another episode of the TF Cast.
Today with us, we have Megan Schnitker. We are in her retail space, the Lakota Made LLC shop. We're in Old Town. What's the address of this spot?
515 North Riverfront Drive. And we are in the exact same building as the Wooden Spoon. We are located basically behind the Wooden Spoon. I tell people use the side door with the 515 above it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've had the opportunity to run into Megan a bunch. Basically, half the time I feel like we're out at an educational or an activist type of thing. We run into you and you're selling wares there. So it's good to actually meet you this time. For the audience, would you just introduce your brand and a little bit of the ethos behind the shop and what goes on in this space?
Yeah, so Lakota Made is plant-based remedies and eco-friendly personal care products. The plants that I use, myself and my family and our employees that have grown into family, we go out and harvest those, and then we turn them into salves, we turn them into herbal teas, infused honeys, tinctures, tonics, infused oils for different purposes, and then I also make eco-friendly personal care is like shampoo bars, lotion bars, deodorant bars, sunscreen bars, lip balms, a few different things. And then all of that basically came from a hobby of mine. And so I've been making making all these different kinds of products for my family since for over 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And I learned how to do use plants, all different kinds of plants that grow around here. Basically, I started learning about them when I was 3 or 4 years old. I hung out at my grandparents' farm and where my uncle and my cousins live, and that was our daycare. That was our nanny. And so, my parents would go off to work and they'd dump me and my brother off over there, and we'd go play outside all day. And so we weren't allowed in the house unless we had to use the bathroom. Or someone got hurt or was dying or needed to go to the hospital. And we weren't allowed in the house until one of those things happened or someone called us hey, we're going to feed you, type thing. Cool. And so we had to play outside, and it was a farm in South Central South Dakota. So there's horses, there's cows, there's fields, there's a creek, there's animals to chase, there's turkeys, there was occasionally some chickens and a couple of pigs. And so we had to fend for ourselves, basically being little kids. My cousin Curtis was 4 years older than me. And then my cousin Ashley, she's 6 months younger than me. And their dad is my uncle. And so while we were playing outside, the random cut, scrape, random, what is this rash that I got from running through the field type thing happens. And my Uncle Neil would come up and he'd be like, oh, here, use this plant on that. And then you can eat this one. That one's a snack. That one tastes like lemons. You can eat that one. If you get a bee sting, here, use that plant. And that's kind of where my plant education started. And when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I met my great-grandmother on my dad's side. And she was pretty close to 100 when I met her. And she lived until I was 16 years old. And I would go see her a couple times a month over in Kyle, South Dakota. Which they now have renamed to Little Wound, South Dakota. And she started teaching me all the traditional uses of plants and teaching me the way that she grew up using them. And then there was a language barrier because English is my first language, but Lakota was her first language. And so I had to kind of guess at what she was saying because there was no interpreter. My aunts and uncles would leave me alone with her and be like, here, take care of her while we go do this with your parents. I'm like, okay. I don't understand grandma. And so I would sit there and we would talk and we would figure it out. We would communicate with sign language, or I'd kind of get the gist of what she was saying. And then pretty soon we were effectively communicating with each other. And then she started teaching me about different plants. I could understand bits and pieces of the Lakota language from her. And pretty soon she was showing me different plants, and she was showing me things that she grew up with. And so She passed away when I was about 16 years old, and I kind of lost my traditional teacher then. And then, being a teenager and young and dumb, I decided to go down the wrong path, use drugs, alcohol for a few years, really hard. And then I sobered up when I was 22. And then I really dove back into my culture. And while I was relearning how to be an adult and learning more about my culture, I started to notice that not a lot of people knew what the plants were that grew around them. And I was like, well, I know some of these and I know how to use some of these. And then I started to really research and look for all the traditional stories and all the traditional uses. I started to grab all the cultural stories that had plants in them and then kind of save them in my head and then use them. And so I made my first salve when I was 22. I was like 7 months sober and I made my first salve, and I thought that was the best thing ever. I thought that was so fun. And so that's kind of how Lakota Made came about. Fast forward a few years, some kids and a husband, and being a housewife, I had always worked. I have always had a job since I was like 16 years old. And for the first time, I was like at home with my kids, and I was a housewife because daycare was expensive for 3 kids. And I was like, okay, well, what do I do besides clean my house 7 times a day and reorganize the pantry for the 3rd time this week? And my husband was like, okay, well, and we were in the process of making salves, and he was like, well, why don't you sell these? Why? Why? Nobody knows what those are. And he was like, well, now you got to teach them. Like, but I'm not a teacher. He's like, yeah, you are. So anyway, and so and he pushed me into this business. It was his motivation and his you need to find something to do. Like, this is something that I think people would really like. And he's like, there's nobody else around here that really does it. Not from your perspective, not from your knowledge. And I'm like, okay, well, sure, we'll try it. And we're still trying it.
When did it click for you that it was a good move and was really the right thing?
Probably a few months ago, honestly, because we started doing this, and we started with farmers markets and vendors markets and things like that. And every time we went, we made, really good money, and people really enjoyed the products. And then we started having like a really good customer base, following me around, and then I was like, okay, well, this is going to go, someday someone's going to get sick of me, and someone's going to get sick of me. Yeah, they'll find out. They'll find out I really do. Yeah. Yeah, they'll find out I really don't know what I'm talking about. And that kind of took over, and my husband had his own construction company, him and his friend. And then when the whole COVID thing happened, they got all their jobs canceled for the year in 2 days. And it was like, holy cow, the world is really changing, and I don't know what we're going to do for income. Because Lakota Made was small, and it had, every time we did a vendor event, that's when we made money. And then it was like, okay, well, we're going to invest this last $500 that we have into Facebook ads. Not knowing how to do, I'm really not tech savvy at all. I'm really not. And so I've kind of watched a couple YouTube videos, and I was like, okay, I think this is how Facebook ads work. And it grew, and it kept growing, and it kept growing. Our online presence grew like crazy, especially during COVID. And that became and is now our current income source. And so my husband didn't have to go find a job because Lakota Made takes care of all of our bills. And we also have 4 employees now.
Wow.
And so awesome. It definitely grew so much that now it's not just our income, but it's for other people's income. And now we have a really good, crazy customer base that comes here all the time.
Also it's in your little explanation of how this all happened, you mentioned developing a salve, and now I'm sitting in a room, and it seems like there's probably 30 or 40 different products here that are all individually
67.
Okay, I was way undershooting it. But yeah, you what is the research and development like? Because this is coming it's coming from your like cultural history and like, how do you develop these products?
So honestly, it's like out of family need. Like foot salve, because my husband has athlete's foot every summer. Triple healing salve, because our kids are outside and they have cuts, scrapes, burns, random rashes, not just in the summer, but all year round. We have 8 kids, 8 daughters. Someone always does something. And summer salve, because 3 of my kids are really allergic to mosquito bites. And so they needed something for more towards the summer. And then when I made summer salve, I found out it's really good for sunburns and bee stings and basically everything summer. And then there's winter salve, because my daughter has really bad eczema sometimes. And then there's wound care salve, because I have a husband that does construction and he comes home with some crazy wounds sometimes. So everything came from a need out of my family. Shampoo bars, because I hate the plastic bottles in the shower. It drives me insane. I can't stand, because it's like, we have 8 daughters, and sometimes, we're a blended family, so not all of our kids are home at the same time, but we have 5 kids that are home all the time. That's a lot of shampoo and conditioner bottles. That's a lot of plastic. And so it's like, we're a bigger family, but you got to think about how much plastic use is in just one household a year, and take that times how many billions of people are in the world.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, everything comes from a need.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Do you direct recycle any of this stuff? Do you take any of your stuff back?
I do. We take all the jars, all the containers, we take back and we recycle. We partner with the Wooden Spoon as far as like recycling our jars and our bottles for sanitizing them and reusing them, resealing them. We do a lot of those in-house. So we take back the soap bags, the jars, the bottles, all of it. We take all of it back and we recycle it.
That's awesome. What so looking around the room here, can you give people a little verbal tour of what we've got? Kind of like what's behind me on this wall?
Back behind you are a mass majority of our herbal teas, our infused honeys, our honey dippers, our tea balls, or our tea infusers, and then my friend Alex's candles from Crystal Candles.
Okay. Sure. And then over by we kind of set up in this space to kind of be in front of a different section each, I think. So I feel like it presents a fun opportunity.
Yeah.
Behind Jacob over there. He's in the area of the bath teas up here, and then all the different kinds of shampoo bars that we have, shampoo and body bars, excuse me. And then off to this right hand, there are different kinds of salves and balms that help out with, that's kind of like our pain salves. So those are our topical pain remedies. As you can tell, they sell out really quickly. Every week we have to make new batches because pain is a big thing.
Yeah. And are you gathering the supplies to make these?
We do a mass majority of our gathering. There's a lot of local farmers that we have met through the farmers market that are harvesting for us, drying out and processing. So, we use quite a few different, local growers now. We have, some friends that go out and harvest for us too. And then there's a couple of these plants that don't grow around here that we do have to reach out and make sure we get arnica flowers because those only grow up in the mountains. And so we reach out to farmers and make sure that they are sustainably sourced. There's no chemicals and that they're a high quality product. And so there are a few of them that we do have to purchase outside of Mankato, but for a huge portion of it, most of them are from here in Mankato.
Okay. And then the last section back behind you, it looks like some oils and tonics, maybe?
Yeah. So we have, these are like our oils, our facial oils, our massage oils, hair oil, which sells out like crazy. And then we have facial products right here and lotion bars. So different kinds of facial bars. Behind me, those are our smokable herbs. Those ones, a little story behind them is that the tobacco plants don't grow up here. And so indigenous people use different kinds of blends of
herbs for different things, and we would smoke them because some of them would be like for coughs and colds. Some of them would be for ceremonial purposes. Some of them would be in celebration, are only used for women's ceremonies. Some of them would be in celebration for only men's ceremonies. So there's hundreds of different kinds of blends, but I have 4. 4 and more in the works. Those are our Pejuta Shotas. And then those ones are tinctures behind us, everything from like elderberry tinctures to kidney and liver support. And then over in the cabinet behind me, there are honey syrups, which are a new product. They're a cough syrup, and then kind of like an everyday wellness type honey syrup. And those are infused, different kinds of herbs infused into honey and then made into a syrup. And then we have our infamous elderberry tonics that are behind you in the fridge.
Infamous.
They are crazy. Those are our number 1 top sellers for the last 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And those sell out like crazy. I have to make giant batches of like 50 bottles.
I'm unfamiliar with the product. What does it do, and why do people love it?
So elderberry tonics, we have 3 different recipes. We have a regular basic elderberry tonic, which is elderberries, elderflower, star anise, cinnamon, and raw honey. And that is made into a tonic. A tonic is a wellness drink. So you would take 2 to 3 tablespoons once a day to help out with body inflammation, gut health, immune system boosting. And then I make them into tonics versus syrups, because tonics, you can still freeze them into popsicles for kids. You can use them in coffees, you can use them in teas. And if you really want, you can go and add it to your elderberry syrup recipe if you really want to. And then I have an elderberry and mullein recipe, which is not that tasty because mulleine's a very bitter plant. So is horehound. Horehound tastes like black licorice. So it's kind of a really potent taste, but it's actually really good for asthma, upper respiratory system symptoms, colds, bronchitis, pneumonia, things like that. And that one, same thing, you take that once a day, or if you have symptoms of a cough, cold, asthma, things like that, you can take it up to 4 times a day. And then the other one that I have is elderberry and chaga, which chaga mushroom is really known for being an incredibly strong fungal medicine, because mushrooms are fungus. And then I add that to the elderberries along with a few other plants, and it's a huge anti-inflammatory, gut health, packed with antioxidants. And so those are huge sellers. And so we sell those. I think we sell probably over 500 bottles a month.
Whoa. That's a wild scale.
That is.
You know?
That's cool.
I had wondered how much, because you bring a lot. Like I've seen you set up at, I've seen you tabling at just multiple places that we've shown up, and you had a lot of stuff with you. So I always wondered just how much of that stuff you were selling, along with like just how many other stores are you installed in? Like I've been to plenty of places in Mankato where I see your stuff available otherwise.
In Mankato, we are at the Blue Boat downtown. Julie manages that, and she has got like an art gallery and a restaurant in there. And so she has some of our products in there. And then I'm going to space it out. There's a yoga or a wellness studio, just because I want to remember it. I'm blanking it out, but it's in North Mankato.
Oh, sure.
Those are our local vendors. Otherwise, we are at Jeff Petroglyphs. We are in Omaha, we are in Kansas, different stores all over the U.S. basically.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And we do a wholesale list. People send us, actually I'm backlogged on sending out wholesale lists of requests, because people like email me almost every day asking for our wholesale prices. And I'm like, oh, I don't. Yes,
I can't
yes.
keep up with
I
that.
know.
Yeah.
I can't. I honestly can't. So we're like trying to I'm in the
wild.
process of like redoing our whole wholesale ordering process, because it's become like a crazy thing where we get like an order a week. And so we make those to order. And so those are very time consuming. I mean, they're fun, they're awesome, but yeah, it's a lot on top of an online store and a retail store.
our local vendors.
Yeah. Well, you're hitting the business from a lot of different fronts there too, with like online and then now physical space. I'm sure it's been a big transition just even in the last couple of weeks and months here.
Definitely. So I've wanted a retail store since I realized Lakota Made could be like a really big thing, could be like a full-time presence here in Mankato. And my husband and our friend Gus and Claire, they were like, no, you don't need a retail space. COVID. You don't need a retail space. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I want to. Like, I really want a retail space. I think it would work. I know it would work. And I want it in Old Town. And they're like, oh, you're ridiculous because that's expensive for retail locations. And I'm like, I don't care. That's where I want to be. And so Natasha Frost owns this building, and she came to me and she was like, okay, this spot is going to open up. Do you want it? And I was like, give me the lease. And then I slapped it down on a table in front of my husband, Gus and Claire. And I was like, we're opening a store in 10 days. And they were like,
surprise.
Well, the store also intends to do more. Like you have an educational space here, and I kind of just want to use that point to like segue into maybe some of the other things that you just do around town here. Maybe talk a little bit about the vision of Lakota Made or some of your other stuff outside of just selling all of these products to people.
Yeah, so we're going to be opening up a classroom in the same space as the retail, and that'll be in addition to or amplifying what I've already been doing in the community for the last 5 years, which is teaching Indigenous history and culture. I used to teach them 2-3 times a week for 2 to 3 years. And every time I went, my classes were full or my classes would sell out. And when COVID happened, a lot of my classes stopped, but we started doing them virtually. And then we found out that opened up to people all over the United States that would participate. And so while we were getting the store ready, I am waiting for my mass vision of how I want that room to look to really kind of, come to, kind of come to me. I have part of the room done. But right now, Claire, she's in the process of moving. And so her furniture's in the classroom. But as soon as we get that out, we will have the classroom open, and there we will have in-person classes for Indigenous history and culture classes. We will have plant classes because I love teaching about plant medicine. It's better, the way I have found out is that people gain a relationship with the products once they know how these plants work and realize that these plants probably grow in their yard or are growing on the hiking trails that they're using around here in Mankato. And so it's pretty cool to see how many people are interested in learning about plants. Because that was our first medicine and that was our first food, not just as Indigenous people, but as humans. And so, we didn't have Walgreens 1,300 years ago. So what did we do? We used all the plants, funguses, and barks that were around us, and so that's kind of like my way of introducing people back to nature instead of running to Walgreens. While you're out on your hike, you can pick something up that to put in that cut or that, that random rash that showed up because you touched this, or you got into stinging nettle because you weren't paying attention, and now you can rub this plant on it. And so that's kind of like my way of like bringing nature back to people.
What is the plant for stinging nettle? Because I walked into stinging nettle yesterday, and it came up. The person I was hiking with was like, "There's probably a plant that fixes that," and I was like, "Well, do you know what it looks like? Otherwise, shut up."
It actually usually grows right next to it, and it's called jewelweed. And it is a plant that it's hollow, and what you're after is the inside of the plant. There's like what aloe feels like, the aloe plant.
Oh, is it called Lego grass to some people?
No, that's horsetail.
Oh, okay.
Jewelweed is like, it's kind of sounds like a celery stalk when you break it, and it's hollow, and it's got leaves on the top, and nature has like this duality thing, as with kind of everything. So what hurts you, often what cures you, grows within each other. And so that's usually how nature works, is like what's going to hurt you, then it gives you the cure to it. And so they all grow around each other.
I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Yeah.
It's happened more than once.
Yeah, I was gonna say I could have used that one when I was a kid for sure, because I was always getting into the nettles. That was a familiar experience.
Yes, poison oak, poison ivy, jewel weed's also a remedy for that as well. And so those usually not necessarily grow with each other, but yarrow will also help with poison oak, poison ivy. So is plantain. They all kind of work together, and that's like we have a basis of like 25 plants that I use in all the products, and it's just like it's like baking. It's like using flour. You know, you can make flour to make a cake or a tortilla, or you can make a gravy out of it. You can make a soup with it. Same thing with plants. It's just using them in different matters. They do different things.
What is the base of a salve? And I've heard you say salve.
Yep.
Is the L silent typically?
Yes.
Okay.
Some people get really fancy with it and they go salve.
Oh. It's salve though. Okay.
Yep, salve. And so that is your plants, and then a carrier oil, which we use organic sunflower oil, and then beeswax, and that's all that in it. So when you make a salve, you get your plants together, and then you the easiest way, the beginner's way to make a salve is to get like a mason jar or a canning jar, put your plants in there, pack it in there like over halfway full of plants, get your carrier oil, and then fill the jar all the way to the top, and then put a lid on it, and then set it in the sun for 6 to 8 weeks. Go shake it every once in a while. And then once you get to the end of that 6 to 8 weeks, then you strain your plants out. And then you compost those. Don't throw them away. Just compost those. Use those. Give those back to nature. And then you take that oil and you add beeswax to it. So you would have, like, if you used a quart jar, you would use 2 to 3 ounces of beeswax in it. And then you would infuse those together, melt the wax in it, stir it, and then pour it into your container and let it set for a day. And then that's your salve.
So all of these salves around us are 6 to 8 weeks lead time on them.
I'm super fancy and I go faster.
Oh.
So I use a heat infusion method, and which is crock pots. And so if you know what you're doing and you can watch the temperature, because if your oil ever bubbles, you're basically deep frying your herbs, and then that's no good. And so you have to make sure that you're watching your oil so that it doesn't ever bubble. And so it's a slow heat infusion for 4 to 6 hours. And then once that is done, then you can, again, compost your plants, strain it out. And then I like to let them sit, though, after they've heat infused. I like to let them sit for like 24 to 48 hours and then strain them out. And then I add the beeswax to them. And so it's definitely not a quick process. Ever. Because harvesting, processing, and drying, harvesting takes 3 to 4 hours every time we go out. Drying can take anywhere from like 3 to 5 days, because we hang dry and air dry all our plants. Because that's the best method. Sometimes I'll put them in dehydrators, but I really don't like to, because I function with ADHD and I forget.
That they're in there and it just drives them out.
It just dries them out way too much, and then they're cooked and then they're no good. So I prefer the air dry method so that I can hang them up all over. And then once they're naturally all the way dried, then we use them in different things.
Yeah, we got on that because you like to educate people on plants. So I guess that's really the case.
So are you doing any tabling or events coming up that people could come see at as well?
So we have like the regular store that is open 3 days or 4 days a week now, excuse me. But right now we are getting ready to go to the Indigenous Pollinator Festival up in the cities. And I can't remember exactly the address of that. And then we are doing a local event with Jessica Milbrandt here in town this Saturday. And then otherwise we are going to be out at Harmony Park for Shangri-La Labor Day weekend. We will be out there fully set up for the whole time. And then we will be at the Mankato powwow
but otherwise, store hours and then online is what we're mainly focusing on.
What were the store hours here again?
Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday is 1 to 6 p.m. Saturday is 10 to 4.
I think we missed a couple things. I'm not sure. Before we were talking a little bit about, I feel like you were involved in a couple other projects that you wanted to talk about.
Oh yeah. So I do a lot in the community. Like I said, I function in ADHD and I like to keep things interesting. So, I help out with River Valley Makers. I am their vice president. And River Valley Makers, they're a group of makers from around the River Valley of Mankato. Some of them are from Kasota. They're from Lake Crystal. They're from all over. And they're a group of vendors, and they get together and they do vendor events here in Mankato, and they're all small businesses, and they're all basically running out of being vendors. And so the goal is to help them, get their products out there. A lot of them are small entrepreneurs. We have helped quite a few of them get to that vending ability, because sometimes they're just they have an art, or they have something that they make and they want to make it a business, but they don't know how. And so we help them get connected with the Small Business Development Center here in town. We help them figure out how to vend, how to price their objects or their art. And then when they get to that next step, we help with their questions with filing with the state, how taxes work, if you're ready for a website, which website, and then which website host you should have, where you should start, what works best, whether you should go with Etsy or you should find your own independent website. What are you really making as far as that? And so I help out with River Valley Makers. And then I am also on the Indigenous Peoples Day Committee. I am the chair of that. And so we focus on Indigenous Peoples Day, which is our second week of October. And we have quite a few events planned this year, as far as like food and a band on Friday night. And then we have educational opportunities for the community to come be involved and learn more about Indigenous Peoples Day, why it's important, and why we got it going in the Mankato community. I am also on the powwow committee here in town for Mankato Powwow. And then I also have am the executive director of the Mankato Revitalization Project, which is where I teach all my classes out of. And then I also bring in other cultural experts as far as Indigenous history and culture and different art forms for different events. Like for my open house, I had Liz Guy Drapo, who did spoken word. I had my uncle Steve Tamayo come and do traditional games. And then I had my nephews, Carlos and Izzy Tamayo, that they come up with their drum group, Upstream Singers, and they were here. And then we had Sabrina Mercedes, who also works for me, come and do yoga sessions. And then we also had a couple different Indigenous vendors that were from all over Minnesota, local here to Mankato. And then my mom's nonprofit came and did some fundraising while we did the open house. And so those are some of the projects that I have going on.
I've always been somewhat curious about the terms Mankato and Mankato. Like you use them you used Mankato when you were talking about the Mankato revitalization project, and then Mankato when referring to the city. And I've always wondered what the difference in terms is, and like why they should be used and when.
So Mankato is actually how you say Mankato. That is the Dakota word for this area, and it means blue earth. And so whatever lost in translation, and it got turned into Mankato. But actually Mankato is a Dakota word. It's Mankato. And so, people get kind of political when you talk about, name changes or pronouncing name changes the right way. So I kind of interchange it, just not to bring up that hot topic of, oh my God, you're trying to rename everything. No, actually, I'm just trying to correct your enunciation.
Yeah. I've always kind of, cause I'm for the name changes. I think that like just teaching what actually happened, and or if they're going to leave it that way, just acknowledging like this is a Dakota word, and like, yeah, we because that's where blue skunk came from. We've heard a story about this before, like the people who, like, it means blue skunk in Dakota or in Lakota.
Dakota.
Like, okay.
So like there's like our Lakota language, like we're all one tribe. Like there's the Ochete Shakonwi, which is which covers Dakota and Nakota Lakota people, and underneath that that big tribe, there's the different dialects, and then you break down into different tribes. And so each community, basically it comes down to is that our language is descriptive words, and sometimes one community says that this word means something, while this other community will say, no, it means this. And so it's hard to learn our language because, you know, everyone's like, well, no, this word means this. And it's like, no, this word means this. But if you say it at this time of day, it means this.
Yeah.
So our language is interchangeable. And so I just go with the basic meaning that I have been taught, because that's not necessarily easier, but it's as far as like explaining what the word actually means. It depends upon the teacher that you have.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate like you explaining the difference and breaking that down, because it's one of those things where I've always kind of like wondered, and I feel like if people are a little bit afraid to ask sometimes, it's like it is because of that political thing, and if you avoid it entirely on account of that, well, then the other side of it has the whole of the conversation in their court.
Absolutely. And that's where Mankato revitalization comes into play, is where I teach all these classes, these cultural classes, these history classes, because we are in Mankato. We are in the home of where the Dakota 38 happened. And I feel like it's important because my kids are in the school district, and my 8-year-old, she actually inspired the whole nonprofit, because she came home from school one day and she was bawling, and I was like, what is your, she loved school, and I was like, what's going on? And she was like, no one in my class believed me that Lakota people are real. And that broke my heart. And I was like, oh my God, I have to do something. And so that's where I started reaching out to all my contacts and was like, do you guys think that, if I taught classes, people would come? And they're like, oh my God, yes. When can I get you? And I was like, I don't know. It was just an idea. What do you want me to talk about? And so that's where I started going to and doing speaking engagements in different classes, and just teaching all the stories that I have been told, all the history that I have been told. And people they feel comfortable to ask those questions, whether they're ignorant or not. I prefer if you ask, because I would like to help you understand our culture, not necessarily our language, because that's a hard one. But I appreciate people that just come in here and be like, I have been scared to ask, but is this, and I'm like, yeah, yes, no, or it could be like this. So I definitely enjoy educating people, because I prefer people ask rather than live in ignorance.
Yeah, I really appreciate you like taking it upon yourself to do that work, because it's certainly work.
It's important.
Yeah. Do y'all want to wrap up on that one? I feel like that's that's the thing. We round the bases.
What we do at the end here then is give people an opportunity to find you on the internet or wherever you'd like to send people. Maybe this little spot right here, and I'll just let you take that away.
Yeah, most people can find me here at 515 North Riverfront 4 days a week when we have the store open. Actually, some community members are like, hey, Megan, I've tried to email you, and now I have your attention because you're right in front of me. I'm like, okay, hi. But yeah, otherwise, our retail store, otherwise we're at lakotamade.com. My email is Megan, MEGAN, at LakotaMadeLLC.com. You can email me there. You can always text me, 605-840-1510. And then we have our Facebook page, which is Lakota Made LLC. And then I also have Pejuta Shota, PEJUTASOTA.com for our Smokables. And then, everything that I do, we list on the Lakota Made Facebook page.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having us in the space and taking the time to talk with us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming. That's awesome.